The Niagara Movement and the founding of the NAACP. The Niagara Movement was the first African American organization that demanded equality in all areas of life at the same time as whites. This movement was formed by W.E.B. Du Bois and William Monroe Trotter. This movement was formed in 1905 after 29 African American teachers, business owners, and clergy were denied entry to a hotel in Buffalo, New York. These leaders then held a meeting at Niagara Falls.
In 1905, Du Bois founded the Niagara Movement, opposing Booker T. Washington's racial accommodation theory. The organization became the forerunner of the NAACP, and years later, Du Bois was appointed editor of the NAACP magazine, The Crisis.
The foundation of this group was based off of the disagreement between these leaders and Booker T. Washington's philosophy. Washington believed that African Americans can better themselves through self-help. However, the leaders of the Niagara Movement believed that African Americans can better themselves through education and believed that Washington had lower expectations for African Americans. Both Du Bois and Trotter publicly denounced Washington's philosophy through literature. Trotter denounced Washington's philosophy in his newspaper, The Guardian. W.E.B. Du Bois also denounced Washington's philosophy through his essay, The Souls of Black Folk. After seeing the poor treatment and low expectations of African Americans, the group formed the Declaration of Principles. This declaration was the first shared Black claim to equal rights socially, civilly, and legally. A quote from this declaration is, "We refuse to allow the impression to remain that the Negro American assents to inferiority, is submissive under oppression, and apologetic before results."
Du Bois and Trotter wrote the Declaration of Principles. This was a statement of the rights of African Americans. These included suffrage, education, and civil liberty. After the first meeting closed, the group worked in the committees and state chapters and sent circulars and pamphlets advocating for civil justice.
The Niagara Movement strived to bring legal change and were one of the first groups that tried to end segregation in the country. This movement was different from other African American groups because of the fact that this movement used their voices and were more forceful with their efforts to get their point across. The main focus of this movement was to have equal economic and educational opportunities and the right to vote for African American men and women. Over time, the movement grew to have 170 members in 34 different states by the year 1906. However, conflict soon grew between the two leaders of the movement. Du Bois wanted to include women, while Trotter did not support women being in the movement. Since neither of the leaders wanted to compromise, Trotter left the movement in the year 1908 and formed his own movement called the Negro American Political League. The members of the Niagara Movement met once a year until the year 1908. In the year 1908, a very violent and large race riot took place in Springfield, Illinois. This was very odd because this riot was the first northern race riot in 4 decades, and this city was also the hometown to former President Abraham Lincoln. In this riot, 8 African Americans were killed and over 2,000 African Americans fled the city. After this riot, both white and black activists thought that this riot was unacceptable and that something needed to be done.
The incident proved more poignant as Springfield was the birthplace of civil rights leader Abraham Lincoln. In response, a group of white New York City liberals gathered a collection of prominent Americans with the goal of forming a civil rights organization. In fact, many of the group's leading members were emphatic white or Jewish personalities, and the only black executive at this point was W.E.B. Du Bois.
White and black activists, and even the members of the Niagara Movement, joined together to fight racism. The motivation from these activists provided the foundation and the formation of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, also known as the NAACP. Many historians consider W.E.B. Du Bois and the members of the Niagara Movement to be the founding fathers of the NAACP.
With the group formed, on February 12, 1909, the National Negro Committee was founded to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. A year later, they became the NAACP. The association's main goal was to ensure the rights and equality of all United States citizens, as promised by the 13th, 14th, and 15th constitutional amendments.